Today, I'm going to talk about finding opportunity in crisis, Alibaba, COVID, and the future of e-commerce for SMEs. How did we go from a SARS quarantine into one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world, competing only with Amazon for that title? I'm going to share with you how e-commerce in China grew. So when I got to China in 1994, China was coming out of years of communist planned economy. There really wasn't much retail because it had been illegal for several years. There were only these little mom and pop shops around China. And I remember being in Beijing in 1999, I was working with clients in the internet. And I remember people saying, e-commerce will never work in China. It worked in the US, will never work in China. And the reason is less than 1% of the population is using the internet. People don't use credit cards. There's poor logistics, government control of the internet. And they said, people in China don't trust each other. How can you get two strangers who've never met to agree to send money and products back and forth? And finally, they said all the internet experts are in Silicon Valley. But it was against this backdrop of all these challenges that Jack Ma pulled his co-founders into an apartment. And on the first day, they believed they were doing something historic. But in 2014, they did have the world's largest IPO in history of the whole Alibaba group. And then a few years later, a Saudi Arabian oil company came and beat them for that claim. But keep your eyes on the news because most likely it looks like next week, Alibaba's company Ant Financial or Ant Group is going to have an IPO that even beats the Saudi Arabian one in its size. So just in the next week, you might see the world's largest fintech company have an IPO in Hong Kong that's going to be in the news quite a bit. And again, all of that really started when we were in quarantine during SARS. The answer is really just e-commerce. If you look at COVID, starting with the lockdowns, you see suddenly all the stock for Amazon and Alibaba really dropped, and the S&P did as well. But then when customers and investors realized that e-commerce was the only way in the COVID era people could do business, it really took off. And so e-commerce in general is the winner. Is what happened in China is going to happen elsewhere around the world, is that we are simply now, because of COVID, accelerating the growth of e-commerce maybe 5 years. And when I speak to people in Latin America, they seem to agree. Next, e-commerce is now mobile first. Most of you know this, but when I was at Alibaba, a lot of people said, as people move from the desktop to the smartphone, then the shopping experience will be so poor that no one will use their mobile phones. Obviously, that's not the case. And in emerging markets where often the smartphone is the first and only way people access the internet, well, that becomes their main. Was said, we're going to focus on the little businesses, the little consumers, the ants, and harness their power to make a powerful fintech group. And as people use payments, they got credit information, they got data about their habits. Ant Financial began to offer microloans and all sorts of innovative financial products. And just to give an example, Ant Financial's payment arm handled $16 trillion worth of transactions in 2019, US dollars. 80 million merchant customers use their services. Their IPO looks to raise about 30 billion US dollars at a $280 billion valuation. And so you look at the combined value of Alibaba Group and Ant Financial, and you're talking about a company that's almost valued at 1 trillion US dollars. Finance and technology are merging so much, obviously, that it merged into a whole new word of fintech. And I think that's why I say to understand the history, study the US, to understand the future, study China. And I think if you look at Ant Group and follow their IPO and see the services they're providing, it's an excellent window into the future of how fintech will evolve in emerging markets. If you think about it, nowadays people don't even want to exchange paper money. You have to get too close to someone.